Welcome zombies to Montpelier, Vermont, the capital of the state of Vermont. And we'll be checking out the Capitol building, the State House, and some other architecture as well. Please remember to share these videos with other zombies, and let's jump up into my airship and have a little look at where we're at. So we're very eastern, northeastern part of the United States. Here's the state of Vermont, New York to our left, New Hampshire to our right, and then Canada just a little bit up to our north right there. And as usual, I recommend that you watch these videos in order, starting with episode 1. I've also organized these videos into different playlists by state, so you could go to playlists and then look at the different videos I've made in different states. And if you've already watched some of my videos, you'll be familiar, but what we're doing is looking at leftovers of previous advanced prosperous civilizations in these lands. And if we look right here, Montpelier sits on this river, the Winooski River, or canal you could say. And I mentioned this I believe in Wilmington, if I'm not mistaken, the first video that I made in Vermont, where many of these cities are like how they were, is like how we think of over in Italy, where beautiful architecture and rivers and canalways running through them. And just another one here, like I've shown you in so many of these sites that we visit, these little cities, these townships, there's water running through them. Much of it decommissioned, not really in use, but we can still see it right there. And in lots of cases, amazing architecture sitting right on those waterways or very close to. And another little place we'll take a look at, not too in depth. I didn't actually make it to here while I was there, didn't know about it. So another good reason to go back, but Hubbard Park, we're gonna look at an ancient leftover tower that's still sitting there in Hubbard Park. And reading up on the story a little bit of Montpelier, Vermont, it was named after Montpellier, a city in South France. And so I thought we'd just look at some of the pictures that they give for Montpellier in South France. And if you watch some of these videos, you already, as we click through these, you'll recognize that, wow, we have the same architecture, exactly the same. And that's because there were previous civilizations spread out all over the place that came from Rome, Italy, Greece, Egypt. And so that's why we see matching architecture everywhere, except in this country, in the USA, it's only given the dates of maybe some of them in the 1700s, but it's more like 1800s, even early 1900s, because no one was here, right? Just teepee Indians and cowboys. But let's just click through some of these images and just look how, and obviously, you see like the architecture, the dates they're given on this, 1364, 1536. This one was really interesting to see. You've got just the huge dome and technology spires on top of it. This one specifically over here, I mean, I've seen both of these around the United States, stuff exactly like this, but much of this that's left over in this country, these domes have been stripped off the top, but some of the architecture around the country still has some intact. Here's a very old aqueduct. I've mentioned some aqueducts in previous videos that we've found here in the United States. And the story that they're going to give is that there were multiple state houses, one and then take that down, another one, take that down, another one. But I think what we're looking at here is just one that's been there for a long time, or the leftovers of one, at least a piece of it left over. Because like I mentioned before, it looks like in the late 1800s, I think there's been several floods, however far you go back. And this architecture was originally much taller, much bigger. But floods have just come up and up and up, and new earth has settled. And so we're left with just little bits of it still poking up. And that's what we're seeing here, and we'll actually talk about some of those floods today in today's video. So I thought this was interesting. By 1805, the town had a population of 1,200. In that year, state legislators sought a permanent home. Montpelier was selected because of its central location and accessibility, and because local residents provided land and money. I think that's just a story. I think this was already sitting there. And this is what I think is particularly interesting, is that, and because local residents provided land and money. So these 1,200 residents, just out of the goodness of their hearts, were like, hey, let's put up the money, let's put up the land, and let's build this structure that looks exactly like ancient architecture. And it says right here, by 1858, which again, I think this was just already there, just they've thrown a new date on it, the layout of the main streets paralleling the rivers was in place. And like I mentioned at the beginning, that's how the ancients built. They had their cities and waterways and canalways running right through them, and that was the case here as well. And this is no surprise at all if you've watched these videos, because every time maybe an exception here and there, but pretty much every time I do research on this architecture that I've gotten videos of and have seen, there's a fire, there's a flood, been destroyed. So in 1875, a large fire destroyed many downtown buildings. In 1927 is when they say a flood hit. Particularly wet summer and fall, heavy rains began. Okay, let's skip forward. Flood waters gradually receded, leaving behind silt, gravel, and debris. At least a foot of mud was left on the floors of downtown stores. So that's, a mud flood is basically what they're saying there. A big flood, and kind of big, and it left new soil, new dirt. And I'm saying, okay, maybe that did happen in 1927. Maybe it was, what did they say, at least a foot. But what I'm saying is, I don't know exactly the date on it, but I think late 1800s for sure. And then other ones prior to that. But yeah, sure, floods. And they did that. They left behind silt, gravel, and debris. But a foot is not even close to how buried everything actually is. There were much bigger floods burying much bigger pieces of the architecture of the castle kingdom structures that used to be here. And it says that in response to the damage of the Great Flood of 1927, which I'll read a little bit more about in a second, then the Civilian Conservation Corps, which is a voluntary public works program, built the Wrightsville Dam during a period of 1933 to 1935. So let's take a look at that. Here's just a quick construction photo they give of some just cars everywhere and some dirt piles and people just standing around. But this is the most interesting part. The resulting reservoir, the Wrightsville Reservoir, required the disbandment and flooding of the village of Wrightsville. And I have pointed this out just as I think this is probably what's happened. I hadn't read that this was the case yet, but I've mentioned in previous videos that how easy it would be to redirect a dam or just open a dam, and you can send massive floods into cities and completely bury them. And what's happening right here? In response to this flood that left 1 foot of new soil, they got to do this whole thing that everybody that just volunteered to do it. And then the result was the village of Wrightsville, which contained at least 30 built structures at the time. These were probably very amazing structures, and they just decided to flood that out, bury it, destroy it. And like I mentioned when we were checking out the Google Maps, Hubbard Park was established with a donation, just another donation, hey, let's just give stuff to the government, known as Hubbard Hill, with the intent to preserve wilderness for future generations. In 1911, additional land was just donated, and from 1915 to 1930, an observation tower was constructed on this donated land. Okay, so there's the story of this land being donated, and then 1915 to 1930, there's an observation tower. All right, this observation tower is why they copped the land, and it doesn't date anywhere close to 1915 to 1930, because look how old this observation tower actually is. This is a very ancient rock tower that was just poking up. And so we get the story of a donation of the land, and they built this just for observation in 1915. And I don't have a date on this one, but these old postcards are usually quite old, 1930s, something like that. And there's a look at it. It looks like it's been beat up already. And I hope to get back to have a look at that tower, because that tower is really amazing and definitely very ancient. Real quick before I talk about the flood, so the Central Vermont Railway, I still have a bunch of research to do as far as it goes, as far as railways go, but I believe an entire rail system and rail cars already sitting here, and the construction of them was really much more about uncovering them, making them usable, and then maybe there were sections of it that still needed to be connected and that sort of a thing. And so we did that, but in large part, this stuff was already here. Like, look at this Central Vermont rail system right here. This is the 1879 map. Here's another look at it, the Central Vermont Railroad, with some of its connections. And so it really looks like a full rail system already here. Entire canalways, canal systems like the Erie Canal, which is not this exact same route, but isn't too dissimilar, already here. And so along with that, yeah, like these bridges, a lot of these bridges that are parts of the railways already here. A lot of the locomotives, the rail cars, also already here. And a lot of the stations that sit along the railways, also already here, ancient old architecture. Okay, the Great Vermont Flood. In lots of cases, when I'm saying a flood came and left land, a common way that's referred to is just a mud flood, meaning a bunch of mud came in and settled, and now there's a bunch of new earth, and that's why we see amazing old architecture poking up on dirt roads, is because there's just new earth came and settled. And this was just a tremendous statistic right here. The flood destroyed 1,285 bridges. So immediately that sparks the question, how are there so many bridges there? And then I think this is the most telling part. The flood is seen as a turning point in relations between state government and governments of the towns. Floodwaters destroyed many bridges, which were the town's responsibility to maintain and repair, but many towns lacked the resources to rebuild their bridges, so the state government undertook the task, and in so doing assumed a larger role than even just doing that in the statewide road system. So send a big flood. There's several ways you can do that, but just an easy one would be reroute a dam, and we just saw proof of that already in what we just read, or create a new reservoir that and open that. There's just several ways you could send huge amounts of water into certain locations, and it looks like this would be a great way for the state government to grab more control over an independent township and grab control over its entire road system, which is what happened. Okay, so this right here is the State House, and I'll give you some more pictures and footage of it. Ancient statue, gold dome, ancient pillars, all made out of rock. You got these two towers right here that were surely much taller previously. Anyways, very cool building. We'll look more at it. But I guess the story is the first one was built in 1808, the second one in 1833, the third one in 1918, and this was really interesting. The structure was a design based on the temple of, I don't know how to say that, Hephaestus, but if we look at that temple, it's a Greek temple, and that's what I'm saying over and over again, all this stuff. It's not that there were just some architects or millionaires that wanted to build something and then donate it to the government that just had an obsession with the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians. It's because these were built by the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, and so that's why they match exactly what we're told are all these well-preserved ancient temples, like this temple of Hephaestus, which is a Greek temple. And by the way, this type of structure, I don't remember exactly where it was at. I'll have to do a little bit of research, but I found one of these in a cemetery that was so beautiful, and surely a leftover. And just in case you were still wondering, yes, there was a fire. And that one, the one that was based off of the structure I just showed you, supposedly, allegedly, was almost entirely destroyed by a fire in January 1857. And since the story is American Indians and American cowboys, let's go ahead and top off this Greek building with an ancient Roman goddess. That makes sense, right? Why would we not do that? And this right here, this is something I do want to learn a lot more about, because these ancient people, if you want to call them goddesses, whatever, are depicted everywhere across the country. Like real old statues, perfectly made out of marble or whatever it may be, granite, and very, very accurate, very real looking, and they're just everywhere. But it would be really cool to kind of know each one that you're looking at, but I don't. But anyways, this is the goddess Ceres, which is on top of the Montpelier State House. So we'll see right here, this is an old type of advertisement, I think, and we'll just see just the tops of some amazing ancient architecture right here. A little blurry, doesn't come through super crispy, but you can see the amazing architecture there. This one was taken in 1876, and there we go. We've got our dirt roads, which make no sense for having these types of buildings thrown up everywhere that are all made out of brick, stone, marble, granite, just all sorts of heavy rock, and tons of it, which is mind-blowing to have that much and build this amazing of architecture, but do it on dirt roads and not use any of that rock stacking, rock construction ability to pave roads. And here's the administration building. We've got the ancient triangle right here, all made out of rock. It just matching ancient architecture perfectly, because that's what it is. This is the Bethany Congregational Church. Okay, yeah, so we can see dirt roads over here again, like this. Like, if you've really got that much brick, I imagine this is brick, I can't really tell, maybe a different type of stone, but if you got that much of it and you're that good with it, drop a little road. It wouldn't be that hard. Then they know how, because the interior of these beautiful floors. So it's just, for some reason, when they built all this, they just didn't want to they didn't want to make it easier on themselves. They just wanted to use their wood carts and haul them through mud, and that's how they wanted to build all this stuff. And I imagine, maybe we'll take a look as we go through some of the footage that I got. I'd imagine that this tower has been torn down, or at least from like here up, this steeple is probably no longer on it, because that's the case over and over again. Occasionally we'll still find something fully intact, but for the most part, the tops of these are just gone. Here's a look at the Montpelier Capitol with some dirt roads just already sitting there. And I don't know evidence of this or really proof or anything like that, but because I've seen this, I have gathered what I would believe to be some evidence in other cities, other videos. This wall behind it, this mountain behind it, could very easily be just a part of this structure that we're seeing poking up still right here. Here's another look at it. This one's apparently in 1912. Just dirt sitting out front. Here's another, and this one, same thing. got the dirt roads, got the horse and buggy, but this thing, just wow. And it looks like it had, I think it's gone now, but maybe some depictions in here of different statues or something like that. And we see there's already a statue and huge dome on top of it here. And it's interesting because I remember when I was here, there were a couple kids out front, and when I was taking pictures and stuff, I just thought to myself, I wonder if I said to these kids, like, this thing's so much older, if they'd care, or if it would, like, if they'd even have anything to say back to it. And so I did. They were, I don't know, they were probably like 14 years old, something like that. And I was just like, this is a lot older than you guys think. And they're like, one of the kids was like, the whole thing, because they just put the dome on a couple years ago, or whatever. And I was like, we can go back and look at all the pictures, and the dome was already there. I think maybe what he meant is they like got up there and did some gold leafing or redid gold leafing or something like that. But we can go back to the earliest photos of it, earliest depictions of it, and it's got the dome. It's got the statue sitting on top of it, and it's also got dirt roads. Yep, see, right here you can see whatever was inside of the triangle is gone. These buildings, just get in there and strip them. I know the Iowa Capitol building still has some of the people, the statues inside of its triangle. And here's another one. I like this one a lot. So we could see it's got the dome, it's got a statue on it. People are gone from inside the triangle, the statues, or the rock carvings or whatever. But this little tower piece over here is also already here, which, if this is dirt, like, that's just an odd thing to throw up right there. And it also has the ornamentation sitting on top of it, which is no longer there. And the building, like the stairs, the building, especially this little leftover of a tower right here, already looks super old. And I don't unfortunately have the exact date on this one, but it looks so much older. Here's what they call the Christ Church. This is an old postcard, and I don't remember. We'll see if I've got footage or photographs of this, how it looks currently, but I wonder if that steeple's still on there. This is the City Hall. Very amazing, huge tower on it. So here's an image of a flood, super blurry, but I guess that's one of them. Here's another one, super blurry. This is the library. This thing looks awesome. And here's a little aerial view of the main street. And remember, it said the main street is paralleling a river. Post office. I've said this in other videos, but like some of these post offices are so insane. And like, this would just make no sense to build this as a post office, in my opinion. And yeah, it just looks like a truly amazing building right here. And we got dirt roads out in front of it. Again, like, look how much rock they put together to build this, and how perfect it is, and how much detail and how strong and durable this is. But dirt roads. So I drove from Wrightsville, Vermont to Montpelier, Vermont, and this was a little stop on the way, which just had a very gorgeous vantage point, and so I thought I'd get a little panorama of it. Also on my way, I ran into this, I think it was a rest stop, and had these really interesting buildings with kind of domed pyramids on top of it, type of a thing, and also some very old rock there too. And it just, taking a second to look at it, it looks like it could definitely be built as some sort of technology right here. And it's got the little spire metal pieces on top of it. There's Daryl over there in the shade. And then across the way, surprise, surprise, if you just watched the Bennington video, I discussed war memorials and a bit of what's going on there, but we've got another war memorial over here made out of very old rock. And it's very interesting how I'll show you that structure in a second, but it's really, there's definitely something else going on there. It's really unique how it's laid out. And so this is the front of it right here. And again, I imagine this thing was actually much, much taller, so that's another very interesting thing to take into account. But I almost wonder if this wasn't some sort of maybe water technology. Zero clue here, but very unique design. And I think it's just an old structure that's been turned into a war memorial. And so I'll actually walk you alongside it here and spin you into the center. And just, I don't know, laid out very beautifully, very specifically, and just for a war memorial. And then it's got all these, I don't know what they are, poking out on them, which kind of reminds me of all those tombstones poking up at the San Diego obelisk, the San Diego Bennington obelisk. You got to go watch my Bennington video to understand what I'm saying there. But another interesting, that white type of, I don't know what kind of stone that is, but they've got that poking up everywhere here. And then just, it's a war memorial. Anyways, I don't know what the connections are there, but very interesting to look at. And then right here, there's another little wall with just some huge stones stacked to form the wall. And here's the entrance to the cemetery that I was talking about, which is super, super cool. And like I said, it has this crown up top, and all these little spires on it. Very old structure for sure here. And so inside of the entrance here, we'll see that underneath this stone, this white marble, it looks like there's actually brick. It's perfectly stacked brick, super old. And along the side of it, some shields that just have to be stripped of much of what was there. I'm surprised there's so much still sitting on the top of this. Surprised it's not stripped off. But like, look at the detail on that crown right there. And they say 1905 for this building. Man, cowboys love to build with white marble, huh? And there's a look at the crown. They love to white marble and throw crowns on top of their buildings. And it was all done by hand, by the way. Here's a look at the river coming into the city. You can see there the gold dome on the Capitol building. So there's this guy right here, super beautiful building, giving it the date of 1850, and it's got ancient pillars on it, all made out of rock. Over here you can see that we've seen this a few times now, but it switches to brown brick. So this front, granite, I would guess. It's a brick building facaded with granite here on the front, and with pillars and ancient shields that we've carved dates into. And this, I really love this piece of the building. Like at the top, they've got these pillars sitting up there, and just again, all the detail on the design. Oh wow, I didn't know I got that. But yeah, you can see the little angels or little babies inside the design. For 1850, doing this, the story is all out of rock. By hand, carving this stuff by hand, carving this granite by hand, all the faces that look super realistic, all this architecture all over the country. And then, so we were just looking at the front of that building. Just to the right of it is where the Capitol is at, the State House. You can see right here. And you can actually, again, see a little bit right here, another type of crown sitting right at the top of this triangle. Big gold dome behind it with a Greek goddess on top. And then we'll have a better look at this in a second, but across the street from the State House are these amazing buildings. Just these brick structures over here, super gnarly brick structures, and then this white marble building with engravings all along it that we'll take a better look at. And then to the right of this white marble building, we've got another brick building right here with very interesting architecture, and very similar one just not too far down. And look how cool the marble is on this building with all the gray swirliness running through it. So here's right in front of the State House, and that we get the story 1808, first State House. Then the second one destroyed by fire in 57, and similar to this third structure on the site, completed in 1859. So I don't know why, but I really believe that it's not that this third one was similar, it's just that this was the one that's been there the whole time and was there long before the country of the United States, 1776, the formation, long before that, already sitting here. And you can see that the two towers that are out here in front have been stripped of the decoration, antiquitech, whatever it was that was sitting on top of them. Same with the little poles that were poking up along the way. Looks like those have been replaced by our newer light poles. And as I've been going around seeing more and more of these places, it's just been interesting to me how much we memorialize war and have the old war weapons sitting out in front. Like that's our focus is war. Even if the whole commemorating, memorializing it is true, which again, go watch my Bennington, Vermont video, because in many cases I think the whole war stories are, some of them even just made up, and especially when they're deeming old ancient structures as war memorials, that sort of thing. But it's like, I don't know, just so much focus on war in lots of these places. And these pillars out front are massive and interesting. It looks like you can see the lines dividing them look like different, there's different sections of it that have been put together, where in the last video I showed a building that had pillars where it was just completely all one solid structure, one pillar without like any sections to it. And like I said, I talked to a couple kids and it was just to see what they would kind of think if I said something like that to them, like this building's way older. But I also had them grab a little video of me running up there just for size reference, so you could see how big these pillars actually are. I mean, I'm about up to, I'm the bottom section of that pillar right there, but very tall pillars. And just look at the detail here on all this. Again, would have had to have been carved out by hand. And then this is a look at the back of the Capitol building. You can see there's a old rock wall running along the side, which again, I imagine this is just the top of a much, much bigger structure. So this is like not the original wall that sat on the ground. This is a wall that sat at the top stories of the building. Same with this archway we see back there. But that archway back there that we see, it goes straight back into what I mentioned earlier, that mountain behind it, where I'm pretty sure that's just more just another part of the structure right here, but it's just covered up in dirt and grass. And look right here, these walls, look how huge these stones are. Those are very, very big stones to build this wall back here. And then I thought this building was very interesting for a couple reasons. The brickwork on it is amazing, but I think you could clearly see how new land came and laid itself down from a mud flood or whatever, and it got a new slope to it, where all this brick, and look how this brick is stacked so perfectly, and like it layers out a tiny bit at a time. And I think that would just be going much, much, much deeper. And what's happened is new earth came and settled, and we've just paved on top of that new earth right there. But in my opinion, this this whole thing has got to go down much, much further, and it sat flush with the earth, level with the earth originally at one point. And then down here, there's a bridge to get over the river, over the canal, into this main structure. Yep, and like I mentioned, this church, its steeple's gone, just been squared off at the top. What a shame. But more beautiful rock castle architecture, insanely strong and durable, with big, huge stained glass windows on it. And I don't know if I have a better picture of this, but in case I don't, I'll point it out right here. But look to the left. Oh, a little wood bridge to get into it, and a little metal railing next to it. That's us. But the actual builders of this insane castle rock building, not us. Ancient peoples.
If you want it, I think we'll sell it to you cheaper next time.
I'm editing this video right now, and I just realized that I didn't make mention of this part when I recorded the video, and I have mentioned it in previous videos, so I wanted to say something about it real fast. But this little conversation I have with this lady right here, hopefully you just heard her say, you want to buy it right now? We'll sell it to you for cheap. And I asked her why that is, kind of already knowing what the answer would be. But I was very curious to hear what she had to say, and it turned out to be that, yes, it's because it's a very expensive building to power. The utilities on it are extremely expensive. If there's ever a repair that needs to happen, also extremely expensive, because there's not contractors, builders, architects that really know how to do that type of stuff on this type of building, because we're not the ones who built these buildings. These buildings were built a long time ago by people who were rock builders that did know how to build and repair and maintain these and power these types of structures. And so I think it's telling for a couple of reasons. One, I think it shows that, you know, if we have such a hard time maintaining and powering these types of buildings, then we're not the ones who built them. And if we're more advanced than the cowboys, then like, why do we still struggle with it so much? And then how'd they throw up such an amazing building? And look, I just saw a guy on TikTok who's got like millions of followers, and he was just spitting some nonsense. The whole is like reiterating the narrative of, oh, these castles and these rock structures used to be absolutely filthy. Everyone in there so dirty, nobody bathed. There were rats running around everywhere and poop everywhere because they didn't have sewage and plumbing. And it's like, no. Yes, they did. Absolutely, they did. The cowboys didn't build this stuff. We didn't build this stuff. We right now have a hard time with the plumbing and the utilities in it. So there's that. And then there's the cowboys didn't build it. And it's the ancient people absolutely did build it and did know how to power it and did have plumbing. Look at the water, the cooling ponds, the pools, the fountains, the canals, the waterways. But I think just the fountains tell you plenty, because like they had amazing fountains blowing high pressure water. And if they did that, they absolutely knew how to power these buildings, flush their poop out of these buildings. And you just don't build, you can't build this type of stuff. Like, that's just so amazing. Out of super heavy, durable rock with beautiful stained glass windows, perfectly enclosed in perfect stone circles and perfect arches. And then you just never figured out poop. You never figured out how to have better hygiene in these buildings. Yes, you did. We've just been fed a stupid story. So I just wanted to share that, because I just think it's very revealing that right now, in this most advanced ever time, we struggle to just light these buildings. It's very expensive. And then to think that the cowboys planned on powering these buildings with just flame candles and throwing logs into fireplaces, it doesn't make sense. Here's some of the huge stained glass windows in there, and I talked about this a little bit in my last video, but you can see this is very good. Like, these faces look very real. Each person looks very much like their own person. I actually think the ones we looked at in the last video maybe slightly better than this, but This is one of the original ones that's in the building, they say. And they've added in some new ones which look like this. And those, I'm sorry, but those fit, you know, no offense to the artist or whatever, but those, not even close. Like, this is way more detailed, way more perfect. And this is just not even close. And you can see again what they're doing with, like, look what these people are wearing. This is very, very nice clothing with a whole bunch of design on it. It looks super comfortable, right down to the kids. Like, look at the kind of stuff that the kids are wearing right here. And like we saw in previous ones that depicted in the background rock domes. But then when we get here, it's just like, oh, they just wore rags. Everybody's just in rags. Nothing really going on in the background. Like, I guess this is a little halo around Christ right here, but compare that halo to this halo. And there's my phone didn't really get as crispy or isn't capturing all the detail, but you can tell there's so much more detail right here and then here. Just not even close. Here's another one, extremely well depicted, every face super real. And look what Christ is wearing right here. Like, look at these jewels, this gold around him, and just beautiful robes. Look at the soldier here in copper and gold, also in very nice clothing. And then again, we see castle kingdoms depicted in the background, which, by the way, this looks exactly like the church that I'm standing in right now looking at this stained glass. How about that? Here's another one. And like, even just look at the sheath that his sword's in, how detailed it is with design. These aren't rags that they're wearing, guys. Not even close to rags. It's beautiful, very well designed clothing. And then you can see definitely a lot more detail here on Christ's crown. I believe this would probably be after he's resurrected. And again, just all the design up on top here. You know, more crowns. And we just saw a crown like that on top of that cemetery entrance. Very similar to that. It's like, we're not throwing crowns on top of stuff. Cowboys weren't throwing crowns on top of stuff. It's like, that's these time period of these people built this type of stuff, lived in this type of stuff, and put this type of stuff on top of their buildings. And so that's why the architecture we're looking at looks exactly like all this stuff. And then here's another newer one. And you can clearly see again, like, just not even close when it comes to the attention to detail, the perfection in the artwork, the realness in the faces, and like the dress that they're the robes, the gowns that they're wearing, they're showing zero design on it. Like, just solid colors. But when we look up here at these, constant design on every little inch, even on this white, on the white top right here, and then right there on the chest. And like, it's just this soldier right here, his blue, the design on the blue piece right there. And it was honestly really a treat to go in there and see that stained glass. And thank you to the lady that was out there, the lady that came and just offered. She saw me taking some videos and stuff and just offered to let me in and have a look. And so I really appreciate that. That was a real treat. And then right across the street from this rock castle church is this courthouse, which is another ancient structure made out of brick with this really unique tower dome on top of it. And then it looks like so one of those, so this is, by the way, this is really cool brickwork right here. Brick and stone woven together, like, that looks amazing. But if we pan over a little bit, then there is, I guess, one of those steeples that I mentioned on the churches when we looked at the old photos. Looks like there is one still on top of there. And wow, is that impressive. And that's all slate, that's all rock on it right there. And all those, like, I don't know how many windows that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 2 or 3 more on the other side. Like, there's a bunch of windows right there inside of that super tall rock steeple. And this right here is the building that it sits on top of. Look how beautiful this rockwork is, and the color, the tan and the brown with the gray. But again, that, like, when I see the gray like that, I wonder if it, like, I'm pretty sure they trimmed their windows in gold and stuff like that. Here's another big steeple on top of a building. This one's been sided up, bunch of siding thrown on it. And here's another look at that tower. Very, very cool with the huge steeple on it. And just this entire building's such a cool building. It's they're definitely doing some work on it, but amazing. This building is also very cool. Like I said, they've just thrown siding everywhere, but still amazing. And all the ancient everything that we want to see on it, like the ancient triangles there on top of the tower. And then right here, it looks like they kept that design, that kind of like stepped square rectangle design, but it looks like it's either wood or plastic. Just like they threw siding on the building, try and threw some wood or plastic on it, like this step design to make it match the other stuff. But like right here, what a shame, this window is just covered up. Okay, so this shot, I'm gonna show you just a bunch of really tall steeples. So there's that one over there, which I don't think we've really looked at. And then that pans into this one here, which I did show you. And there's that guy out there. And there's that big one, and then this building that we're looking at right now. And so on this one, they're given the date of 1874. And let me pause that right there. The layered brick arches, amazing. Okay, I'll let this play. And it looks like at the top of, like, look how tall that window is, just huge. And then this is the steeple on top of the building. This building's really amazing, given it the date of 1894. And in this case, they didn't just carve straight into the rock. That's like carved out of the rock, that 1894. So that's interesting. But all the detail on here, the pillars, and then the granite pillars, or marble pillars right there. And taking a look at this church again right here, look how big. Okay, so this entryway, that is a window. That's one of just another of these old tall windows that we see, but in this case turned it into an entryway, calling it a door. Obviously that's that's just a window like all the other ones we've seen, but the top of this steeple is very interesting. I think I'm convinced more and more every time I look at this stuff that steeples, towers, domes are energy technologies. And then here's this one with another very tall steeple on it with white siding thrown on top of everything. But you can see that the steeple right here, when it switches from the siding, turns into shale. And look at the design there. Here's a look at it from the side, and it looks like underneath all the siding, oh, you know what? I was wrong. So that's not even siding. That's just, they've just painted over the stone. It looked like siding from a distance, but okay, so it looks like they've got both actually. Looks like this bottom section is stone that they just painted white, but then it looks like over here on the tower, they did actually throw white siding on it. So they made, that's interesting. This building's pretty cool. They call it the Pavilion. And it's a really big building that sits right next to this ancient building. And it's got that kind of square maze design on it, the ancient triangle right there. I showed you this building a little bit earlier, but here's some more close-ups of it. I mean, look at some of this stone here is huge. Like, look at the stone around the arch of that window, and then the rest of it looks like, and then stone on the bottom, and then brick, and then look at this tower right here. Like, what in the world? That's amazing. And look at, I mean, that's okay. The old world is the builders of this thing, and the new world, us, we put little plastic, I don't know what you call them, hang up little plastic things with a little bit of cloth outside to keep some of the sun out or whatever. But okay, so here's a look at some of the artwork that's on that white marble building that I pointed out towards the beginning of the video. Look like some leaves and a squirrel and a bird right there. This see, I think here they're telling us a little bit about how they build. You see the square tool right there. It looks like they've got cranes over here, and this is the building being built right here, the building under construction right there. This one, I'm not sure, but I just don't think this is like cowboys that we're looking at, you know? I'm pretty sure this is the old world and all their symbology and how they depict things. This right here almost kind of looks like a telephone to me, but, oh no, or like a scale. But it kind of looked like an old telephone that you pick up. I mean, a hand looks like the sun, some rays coming from the sun. Maybe they're depicting some sort of solar technology right there or something. Here we see, looks like we've got some trees, a bird right there, and then an axe, a hammer type of thing. I guess art is being depicted here. Maybe. Right here we've got the sun in the background, scales hanging from a sword of truth possibly. And then we've got the ancient eagle right here, which I've talked a little bit about this before, but look, I think these buildings were already sitting here and they had all sorts of decorations and carvings and engravings on them. And so I think when new conquerors copped it all and started introducing new populations and feeding the population stories to explain everything, they just grabbed a lot of the old symbology and gave it a new story. And so, you know, like this eagle doesn't look super foreign to us because we've seen it on flags and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's just because it was already on a lot of these buildings. So grab it and use that as a symbol for something new and different when it's just the ancient civilization and their depictions. And this is interesting. These look like a wheel, some sort of wheel here. This looks like energy, maybe almost like power lines kind of a thing with looks like maybe a factory in the background there. I don't know. And this right here, this is where I'm like, okay, here's rail train and here's air flight. And I've talked about this previously, and maybe I'm wrong here, maybe I'm not seeing things right. I don't know, but this looks like what we would call an airplane. And then this looks like a train. And it's interesting that they've got the cogs on the wheel perfectly coming together. Not quite sure what's going on in this one, to be honest. Or don't even really have any guess. I don't really necessarily know what's going on in any of them, but I don't really have any guesses for this one. But it does look like maybe right there's, I don't know. I'd be interested to know what's kind of etched into the rock there. Some sort of wheel with some really big chains and anchor to it. Looks like we've got oxen here, what we'd call a bucket and a hammer kind of a thing. I don't know why I didn't get out to look at this one. I guess I just drove by it and got a little video of it, but yeah, this one looks exactly like how they showed us in the old pictures. Very, very cool. And as a little bonus here at the end of this video, that'll be it for Montpelier, Vermont. But as a bonus here, I just found this, in just some of my research, I found this article really interesting. Because I think sometimes when they say unrealized or this was a proposal for a building, a proposed design, I think sometimes in some cases, maybe more often than not, that's much closer to or is how the original building was. And so I just thought these were really interesting to see. So the United Nations, I guess this was a design for their office in San Francisco, and I believe this was in San Francisco. And if we look at the San Francisco World Fair Expo that they show us, yeah, this matches the architecture that was already there. So I imagine, I think there's a good chance that was already there. This one was really interesting. This is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Now we just see just the bridge, but look at all this other tower architecture that used to be attached to it. This was supposedly a proposal for a life insurance building in 1923. And I just think this is the type of stuff that actually used to exist across America. This is a part of Chicago. And again, look at the architecture in the Chicago World Fair Expo stuff. Sure, I could see this having actually been there. And then when it shows this little design of it, it's like, okay, now it's looking like a computer chip. So maybe that's what this building was technology of some sort. This is another skyscraper in Chicago, Illinois. And look how tall it is. Huge. It's showing some of the other skyscrapers that are, the size we think of now. If I can zoom this out. Yeah, but look, I can't even zoom it out all the way. And then this one I also thought was really interesting. Just a series of like pyramid structure type of things. And look, if they did something like this out of rock and it got old and buried, that would look like some of our mountains that where you see them, where they've just got kind of peak after peak after peak. So this was a plan for the 1939 World Fair in LA, showing a skyscraper, the tallest building in LA. This was also apparently planned for downtown LA. And this was a 17-mile long monorail system planned for LAX. And when we just looked at the New York, it was the New York Fair Expo 1913, I believe. Might be a little off on that date. Maybe it was like 1939 or something. But anyways, it shows a picture of this, basically. Like a little bit different, but it basically shows a picture of this and that a monorail existed out there in New York City. Looking, exactly like this, exactly.
If you want it, I think we'll sell it to cheaper now.